So as if things couldn't get worse for us as UFC fans after that 306 card in the Sphere, where Merab completely destroyed one of the best divisions in the UFC, completely ruined the sport. Valentina Shevchenko, Alexia Grasso, one of the most boring fights in UFC history. By the way, this was on a once-in-a-lifetime card. We get this news right here. The UFC announced UFC 309. As you can see on screen, this right here is the card. It's just fantastic, really. I mean, John Jones's retirement fight, 309 in New York. Like, this is rivaling 300, this card, in my opinion. Like, this is just... So, John Jones is fighting Stipe Miocic at UFC 309, which is bad enough in the main event. The fight card itself is absolute dog shit. It is shit. So fucking shit, this card is, right? And after this... Are we going to get John Jones versus Tom Aspinall? Or we fuck. This is John Jones' last fight. It's a shit pay-per-view. And it's a shit main event that nobody wants. Let's take a look at this card. So starting off. What's this? Is this the prelim? Featured prelim fight is Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. That's a fight that everybody wants. I like Chris Weidman. He is a legend of the sport. Like... Next, let's just move. I don't even want to talk about that fight. Shit. Next, Anthony Smith versus Dominic Reyes. This actually isn't that bad, to be honest. Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith. I don't really give a shit to see Anthony Smith ever fight again, to be honest. But this is Dominic Reyes' run back to the title. The guy broke his losing streak against Jacoby. Now he's getting in there against Anthony Smith. And he's going to knock Anthony Smith out. And then he starts to run to the title. And we finally see Dominic Reyes reach his goal. And finally get the belt around his waist. Now, if Anthony Smith beats Dominic Reyes, I will gouge my fucking eyes out mid-watch. Just saying. Next up, we've got Natalia Silva fighting. Let's just move on. No one wants to talk about that fight. Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. This is an interesting one. And one that could be a main card opener, in my opinion. Bo Nickel is obviously one of the most highly thought of prospects in the UFC right now. Dana White seems to love him. The UFC love him. They put him on UFC 300 above the likes of the greatest UFC bantamweight of all time and Aljamain Sterling and shit like that against Cody Brundage. One of the worst decisions the UFC have ever made, in my opinion. He didn't look great against Cody Brundage, in my opinion. I can just remember him shooting in for a takedown and Cody Brundage just throwing him off him. That will never escape my mind, seeing that happen to Bo Nickel, because I think Cody Brundage is ass. No offense. But with the competition he's faced so far, this is a big step up in Paul Craig. Paul Craig, let's talk about this matchup right here. Obviously, Bo Nickel's best attribute is his grappling, is his wrestling. Now, will he choose to offensively grapple against someone like Paul Craig, who is arguably one of the most threatening guys off his back in the UFC? This guy snatched up submissions over Ankalaev, Jamal Hill, Krylov. The list goes on and on. This guy does have some pretty impressive wins. However, if you keep Paul Craig on the feet, outside of a couple good body kicks, this guy's essentially fucking useless. And I think that's how this fight's going to play out. I think Bo Nickel knows this. I think the UFC know what they're doing here by putting Paul Craig in there with Bo Nickel. Paul Craig does have a bit of a name. Like I said, he's beaten some massive names in the UFC. And if Bo Nickel is able to beat him, that makes Bo Nickel look great. And I think Bo Nickel will beat Paul Craig. I think Bo Nickel stops Paul Craig maybe in the first round. Bo Nickel is powerful. He does carry a lot of power in his hands. And Paul Craig is just useless on the feet, to be honest. Yeah, Paul Craig's getting KO'd. Can't lay. Next up, co-main event. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler 2. I love this fight so much. This is shit. I mean, this is actually going to be a fun fight to see, but Michael Chandler's just ruined everything. He's ruined McGregor's career, the greatest comeback of all time. Michael Chandler's just completely ruined it for what? To go in there against Charles Oliveira and lose again, and then not get the McGregor fight, miss out on the biggest payday of your career, the biggest fight in combat sports. But anyway, that's what Michael Chandler deserves, clearly. Charles Oliveira obviously coming off that loss against Arman Tsarukyan. A lot of people think that he might have won that fight. I don't. Oliveira tends to do this thing. Now, Michael Chandler doesn't have this style, but when Oliveira's put on his back, similar to what we've seen against Alexia Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko, when he's put on his back, he is dangerous with threatening submissions, yes, but he spends way too long on his back, and then he gives away rounds. Oliveira does that. That is a problem in Oliveira's game. Michael Chandler won't do that with him. Michael Chandler will choose to stand with Oliveira, and we've seen how that played out. Yes, Oliveira did get tagged early in the first round, but look at how the fight ended. Oliveira smoked him. I think that's going to be the exact same thing. Michael Chandler has been so inactive now. He's been out for ages. I think Michael Chandler gets stopped within 3 rounds in this fight right here. The fact it's a co-main event fight is fine, but 5 rounds just doesn't make sense. This card is actually dog shit, to be honest. Oliveira KOs Michael Chandler inside 3. And finally, the main event. Who's going to win? Jon Jones or Stipe Miocic at 305 years of age? Who knows? This is so exciting. I really wanted to see this fight for Jon Jones. Like, I just don't know. Is he going to win? Is he going to win against a guy who hasn't fought in, nearly 3-4 years, and his last fight got folded like a fucking deck chair by Ngannou? Like, come on. This is the heavyweight division. But no, Jon Jones is going to beat Stipe, honestly, within 2 rounds. Stipe's like 95 years of age. Like I said, his last fight he was folded like a deck chair fucking years ago. This is a gimme fight for Jon Jones. He's going to retire after this fight. Both guys are. Now, if Stipe Miocic beats Jon Jones, that's the biggest upset in UFC history. But it's not going to happen. Jon Jones will beat Stipe. I think he might submit Stipe or finish him within ground and pound on the mat. And that's it. Both guys are going to retire. The UFC have ruined the heavyweight division. They need to make Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. They know they do. And they won't. And they've just completely crushed a division. Overall, UFC 309 is honestly like 4 out of 10 at best. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. And as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you again in the next one.